Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm here with football data expert Gareth again to take us through. Now, this is going to be a mammoth episode and one that you've all been asking for on Twitter. Gareth had to, he can't even get through his door with requests to get all the lowdown on these players. But yeah, we've got some, the rumour mill is absolutely flying at the moment with Villa, and we've got just over a week until the transfer window slams shut. Players are leaving left, right, and centre. We've brought one or two in, but the rumours are abound of who else we're going to bring in. So, who better to analyse the potential players coming in than our man Gareth Cooper? So, yeah, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. I'm good.
Great stuff. Well, we best get diving straight in, but as always, please do leave a like on this video. As I say, the information we've got is fantastic, so please do leave a like. It helps us grow the channel, helps us do more shows like this. And please, if you could subscribe, that would be amazing. So, Gareth, we've got forwards, we've got midfielders, we've even got a defender thrown in. But I think, obviously, with the Danny Ings situation last week, him moving on to West Ham, we brought John Duran in, but Emery said that he is one for the future. So the kind of talk on Twitter, the talk in social media is that we need to bring someone else in. So the rumours have been around about Musa Dembele. So we wanted to start with him because that seems like one that's most likely. So yeah, just talk us through kind of the information. We've got his 2021 stats here in terms of his radar. And just give us some information here and what the interpretation is here.
Yeah. So what we've done is you'll see the sort of his radar from this year coming up after this one, and we'll have a look at a bit of a comparison, because in this one last year he was absolutely bossing it. I think a lot of players, we looked at him last year. I think a lot of people did want him at the club. He was a wanted man across Europe, but he stayed with Lyon, didn't move anywhere. And so now this year he's available on a free in the summer, which is obviously going to pique a lot of interest to a lot of people. But as we can see, last season he absolutely bossed it. He did so well last year. Let's have a look at my notes. 21 goals in 30 League One games last year. So, fantastic return, and we can clearly see he's an all-round forward. He's got everything, and we saw him at Celtic, where he obviously sort of did quite well at Celtic, but in a higher level at Liga, he's obviously shone even more. So yeah, I think this will be the one that sort of we'd really like to get over the line, to be honest.
Yeah, and we're hearing now he's got 6 months left on his contract, and we could get him at a cut price fee. Now, obviously, him and his agent might be more inclined to wait to try and see if they can drive his wages up, but also then it runs the risk of him getting injured or falling even further down the pecking order, because they brought Lacazette in, and this radar from this season doesn't quite show the same kind of output, but obviously from the first radar it shows that there's a player in there, but he's maybe just fell out of favour a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's had very limited minutes this season. He's only scored 2 goals in 6 starts, which I suppose is not a bad return. He can do, but yeah, he's fell out of favour a little bit, and things just haven't really worked out so far this season for him. And I don't know whether that's to do with the contract situation, whether that's being run down, and sort of the manager sort of feels that maybe sort of he's going to be going anyway, so we shan't sort of invest too much in him into the starting 11. And like you say, due to Lacazette being on the scene now, he's kind of not wanted, but it seems to sort of a little bit that way, that Lyon are sort of more than accepting that he's going to be going out the door, and so therefore they're sort of preparing for life without him already, if you like, which is a shame for them, but it's a bonus for the rest of us, I think.
Yeah. And just finally, in terms of like the analysis, this kind of gives you an idea of his strengths and potential, some of his lower percentages, maybe some of the areas that he needs to work on. But we could see some real kind of strong greens here, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, Musa's not by any means a creative sort of player in the terms of where you would expect him to be crossing balls into the box, playing through balls, key passes, etc., etc. He's more of a box man, but yeah, we can see he's got some good assist numbers. His goal creation is pretty good, so he can be creative. It's just a case of sort of getting him in those positions where he can be. But really, we want a link man. We want an out-and-out striker who can score goals. XG to goals ratio is good. It was last year as well. One season, we don't just look at one season. We're looking at about 2, 3, 4 seasons. Is he consistent? And he has been, to be fair. So this season is not really a benchmark for what we want to see. We're more looking at last year. So yeah, I think he'd be a good addition. I think, and I can't see Leon letting him leave for free in the summer. Something's got to happen in January.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly see, and he seems the right age, seems the right profile, especially just letting Danny Ings go. So, let's hope that he's one that is close, because I think he will be a real good addition to what we need at the club. Another player that is not going away in terms of rumours. It's died down a little bit. Obviously, last transfer window, it was really rife and it was almost at the club. But Ismaila Sarr, you wanted to do a little bit of a focus on.
I wanted to do a bit on Sarr.
Yeah, and you've looked at kind of him as an attacking midfielder and him as a forward, because obviously he can play one or two different positions. Where did you want to start in terms of the radar with Ismaila Sarr?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've put him up against, just let's have a look at the comparison radar, if you like, up against Emiliano Buendia. And the reason I've done this is purely for the fact that, Buendia has been playing out on that left-hand side a little bit more. The left-hand side a little bit more. And so we've seen sort of different variations of where Buendia can play. He could play on the right of midfield, he could play on the left of midfield, and he's sort of done a little bit of both, I think it's fair to say, this season. And Sarr is that sort of player who tends to drift out onto that left-hand side a lot more. And I've actually based this on EPL numbers. So we've taken the average of everything from the Premier League numbers for this season for an attacking midfielder, and we've put Sarr's numbers from the Championship this season up against Premier League numbers. And we can clearly see here, that he sort of stacks up reasonably well. Buendia is interesting because he's been asked to do sort of a lot of defensive work this season, more so under Emery. And that's probably skewed these numbers a little bit more, where we wouldn't normally probably see him play in those positions. We're used to seeing him in a number 10 sort of role. But obviously here we can see is, the tackles, and the dispossessed and the fouls are up. And that's due to sort of a lot of defensive work, where Ismaila Sarr in the Watford side is free to sort of do a lot of offensive work and less so on the defensive side. But he has got that to his game. So, yeah, I just wanted to sort of stick that on and just give people an idea of sort of where he could fit in and how he would fit in on that side.
Yeah. And let's have a look at his strengths in terms of the bar chart, because obviously, clearly here, shooting and I guess winning fouls as well, and getting us up the pitch, I suppose, is one area where and obviously dribbling as well is one area where he's very good.
Yeah, of course. Ball at his feet. He's that sort of player, taking on players, facing people up one-on-ones. That's where he's sort of, he's dribbling and everything else. And then shot ending sequences as well. So we know that he's got that to his game. He can score goals. He can do sort of quite a bit. We're not really sort of that worried about sort of the defensive metrics with Sarr, because I think, it's just not a big part of his game. It never has been. But I think his offensive numbers, sort of goal creating actions from live passes is a strong one, alongside the dribbles and everything else is important. We're looking for someone on that left-hand side who can play on the left, or on the right as an inverted winger, if you like, and who also could play up front. And I think we're going to have a look at that as well in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's talk about his kind of forward player as a forward in terms of his radar. Looking at his kind of main areas where he can be most effective. So yeah, what does that tell us here about him?
Yeah, so we're going to look at two radars here as well. I've stuck him on a sort of a forward and a striker template. We're also going to see him on an attacking midfield template in a minute, and you'll see a big difference in some of these. Sort of, you put them side by side, you'll be able to see sort of like the differences of what he can do in his game, depending on where he plays on the pitch. We can see all the formations that he's played in for Watford this season. Great technical ability, sort of like I say, shot creating actions, goal creating actions. So he's got a lot of creative stuff on that left hand side, and we're not watching. The crossing is a little bit of an issue, possibly, but again, it's not sort of. He's more sort of getting into the box, cutbacks, that sort of thing. So not a traditional out-and-out winger by any sorts. And that's the sort of thing that we're seeing here. This is on a striker template, obviously. So we're looking at expected goals. We're looking at goals probably could be a little bit improved. But he's, it's improvement on what we can see in the, as a striker template. That's what we want to be seeing, really.
Yeah, and then if he was to be asked to be deployed in an attacking midfielder role, how does it stack up for Sarr?
Yeah. Again, we can see the expected goals on the sort. We can still see plenty of shots. We can see the assists go up a little bit. Progressive passing, a decent pass success rate. All right, dispossessed a few times, but you expect to see that with a wide man, especially a good dribbler like Sarr. You're always going to see players dispossessed, so we're not too worried about that. Little bit of a defensive side to there. We can see a little sort of shimmering in a little bit there, but yeah, I think this is the sort of thing. And I think if you were to sort of merge in between the two, between him playing as an attacking midfielder and a striker, you're probably looking at, on that left-hand side, possibly. Are you looking at him as a second striker? Possibly. So it depends. I think he's more suited to a system that's sort of like a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 rather than a 4-4-2 where you're asking him to do defensive work as a wingman. I think, so that's a quandary, but I think he's the difference in what he can do in those both positions. You put them both together, I think it's worth a shout.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of other ones, maybe slightly. I mean, Tarim Moffey's been touted around to various clubs, and then Jonathan David was rumoured previously, but you wanted to do a little bit of a focus on them. So we'll just whiz through those guys because they are potential other options. But Tarim Moffey, definitely been touted around various clubs. What can you tell us about his main sort of strengths and what he might bring to us?
Yeah, Moffey's been one that sort of seems to have come to the fore, sort of 11 goals from 5.7 expected goals this season. It's a good return. That is a good return for a centre forward, especially not playing in the greatest of teams in Lorient. It's probably fair to say, no disrespect to them, I should say, but 11 goals from those 5.7 XG is a very, very good return for a centre forward. Very good return indeed, and there's not many in sort of. I think he's one of the top ones in Europe for that. So yeah, it's definitely worth a shout. It's definitely worth a look. He's been touted around as names a lot on Twitter. Very sort of popular name around. He has been looked at. I think, you would expect him to come into that conversation when you're looking at potential centre forwards to come in, can play in a variety of positions as well. So, it's worth, again, it's another one that's worth a shout. Good player. Lacks a few a little bit here and there, a lot of not so much a creative player, more a sort of bustling centre forward who can score goals. Probably still needs to add a little bit more to his game, and if I'm honest, whether he'll get a move to a club, I don't know. He's one of these sorts for me, I'm kind of not quite fully in on him just yet.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit more work to do, maybe. Yeah, potentially go to another club to build his reputation and then, move. And now Jonathan David's been interested because he was, like I say, he was all over the shop in, the previous window, various clubs after him, and then probably looked at, let me have a good World Cup and then see. But he didn't have a great World Cup, but since the World Cup, he's been absolutely flying. But I've not necessarily seen too many rumours floating around about him. But tell us about his kind of main strengths and what he might bring.
Yeah, very popular centre forward amongst Europe's elite. I think, Canadian international, another good player. 12 goals and 4 assists this season for Lille. Another one that's sort of a really strong sort of favourite. And the reason we put these formations played at the bottom there is because this can match up with sort of certain metrics that we put into a system that allows us to then see what players would be able to suit certain systems. It's just another filter that we can use, and it brings certain players to the fore. Jonathan David is another one that comes out. We looked at him last year. I think I did quite a bit of work on him last year as well. So he's another popular man. Whether you're probably looking at a fair whack for him. I think I think you're looking at about 45 million for him, I would imagine, which is a lot. These metrics, though, I should say, haven't massively improved since last year, but they haven't gone down either. He seems to have added a lot more to his overall game since last year, I think, from my analysis anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at that bar chart, it looks like he's kind of, not necessarily excelling in too many areas, but he's just good at pretty much everything. Whereas some of the other players have been, high 80s and 90s in certain areas, but really low in other areas. So,
Yeah,
I
and
guess
that's
you're getting a bit
important.
more of an all-round player.
Yeah, and that's why we do these analyses, because it does it sort of not that it just separates the men from the boys, but you can see, especially when we've got comparisons compared to last year, we can see, are people improving? I don't think it's fair to say that many people would have heard of Terem Moffi this time last year. He's on filters. We've seen him about. He's popped up on certain things. He's been there, but yet these numbers were nothing like they were, compared to what this. And the same with Jonathan David. People sort of knocked him a little bit. Hasn't had the greatest of seasons, and he probably hasn't. But still 12 goals and 4 assists is a pretty good return in the minutes played.
Absolutely. So that's the forward line, looked at in terms of potential options. I do think Dembele is probably the most further on, which would be a good signing for us. But you never know, in the summer, might be looking to do some business then. Moving on to the midfield now, Gareth, we've got, again, 1 or 2 options here. Obviously, one name that looks quite far along, but you've given us a couple of other options as well. Lee Kang-in, who's, again, one of these players who's been touted across Europe. Potentially fits the mold of what Emery likes in these midfielders. Talk to me about kind of his kind of radar and what he might bring to Villa in terms of that speed, dribbling, creativity sense.
Yeah. There's a couple of things here. Obviously, sort of, he's a star man at Mallorca. Still young, 21 years of age, South Korean international, played at the World Cup. Very, very popular back in South Korea. So this is another thing that could be looked at for potential marketing opportunities out in South Korea, where football. We obviously know that Heung-min Son is a very sort of popular player, and so is Kang-in, really popular out in South Korea. So they will be looking at that as well as a possible sort of avenue for exploration. But yeah, again, sort of creative sort of wide man usually plays on the left of sort of a left wing back position for Mallorca. Usually playing usually a 5-4-1 shape. They have varied it a little bit, and he has played up top, in fact, a couple of times in their 5-3-2. But yeah, he's a left wing back. Can take a direct free kick, good dribbler, good crossing. Likes a long range shot as well. He is something a little bit different. He is a little bit raw at 21. But obviously, yeah, this is the sort of thing we would like to see from sort of like a wing back. This is probably a reasonably typical wing back profile, apart from sort of like tackles, possibly could be sort of, improved upon, through balls, progressive passing, passes into the box, successful dribbles, assists, expected assists, shots on top. This is the sort of thing we want to see from an offensive wing back. Where he would fit in at Villa is another thing. I think he's a bang on left midfielder in a 4-4-2. I don't think we're going to deviate from a 4-4-2 for Emery. I don't think we will. I don't think we'll see 3 at the back. Very rarely. I can't see it. Apart from if we're facing sort of City again at the Etihad or something like that. So, but I don't think we're going to see it. So we're looking at players that are going to be able to fit in that 4-4-2 shape all over the pitch. Different, but so it's got to be quite position specific, one would imagine. But a left wing back plays left midfield. It's a no-brainer.
Well, I think as well, like you said, that that successful dribbles is really important, particularly the way that we like to have players that can carry the ball forward from box to box in with real speed. You looked at us trying to break the press on Saturday, and Buendia was getting into areas, but it just wasn't quite, finding that last ball. And Bailey's the same, can be frustrating. And I think if you can improve that quality, that obviously makes us much more of a threat.
Yeah. I mean, we also, it's all very well being able to dribble the ball, but we need end product. We need something that's going to come at the end of that, and that's why we then look at further on metrics from that. What does he do from the dribbles? Is he hitting expected assist numbers? Are we seeing crosses into the box, passes into the penalty area? What sort of numbers are we getting from that? And he backs that up just about right for me, Kang-in. So, and he's another Twitter sort of. Another player that's very popular on Twitter.
yeah, definitely.
You see, these names get bandied about. They're new for some people, but word gets spread about. But they're on radars of people. People. We know who they are. So,
yeah, absolutely. One player who just won't go away. And it looked, if you look at the press, if you look at the French papers, they're saying that, you know, Matteo Guendouzi is playing his last games for Marseille. He's had a fantastic offer from Emery. I don't know how much we believe that, but you kind of done a bar chart here comparing him to sort of other midfielders. What can he bring to us, and how good is he?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what we've done with Sarr. So apart from different positions, obviously, but we've got one bar chart for him. I think we'll see another bar chart, won't we? For
we've got a radar. Yeah, we've got a radar for
yeah.
him against McKennie.
That's it. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to post some other little comparisons for
Yeah, I'm going to
Guendouzi
post some
before.
more later. Yeah, because I think I've missed a couple out, so we'll do that later. But yeah, there's been sort of a lot of talk about it. I think there's never any smoke without fire. If you're hearing a lot of sort of things along the lines like that something could be done. I think I saw it posted today that they were having talks or something today. I don't know, but some of these accounts, you know, just don't trust people because it's just,
no. Villa do their business quickly and fairly quietly, you know. But like you said, there's no smoke without fire. But I mean, clearly looking at this, he's quite a strong all-round midfielder. Maybe not the best at tackles here, and is that something that we maybe look at? But obviously, pairing him up with someone like a Kamara might not be necessary.
No, it's quite surprising. I think I did. It's my fault. I did miss a couple off. I think, and I've done some sort of comparisons where he's in an attacking midfield position compared to what he does as in just a central midfield position. This is a bit overall. This is compared to a big five midfielders. So we're looking at sort of midfielders as a whole. So yeah, you can't knock that. You know, I think anybody who sort of sees anything, so his all-round game has massively improved since he left Arsenal to join Marseille, and yeah, he's got experience with it and everything else. So yeah, be a good
addition. Be a good addition. Yeah. And obviously, Weston McKennie might have his sights slightly higher than Villa, like in terms of, well, I don't know. He's talked about Chelsea. I mean, higher in terms of wages. Whether we're rivaling them now in the league, you know, we're not too far behind them. But you know, from looking at this, Guendouzi maybe where McKennie might have a slightly higher goal threat. Guendouzi's he's pretty outperforming him in many other areas, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, McKennie's obviously a bit more of a box-to-box. I mean, Matteo Guendouzi could be described as that. I take it, I think he probably is. But McKennie, obviously, yeah, like you say, have got his sights set quite high. This is something that we did about 3 or 4 weeks ago before McKennie was sort of. I think he's pretty much said that he won't be coming to England, full stop. So, but Juventus need the money, so the toes were dipped in the water, as it were. But you know, I think he's a cracking player, McKennie, personally. You know, would I prefer to see him over Guendouzi? Not particularly. I think it's sort of chalk and cheese, whichever one you personally prefer. But it's one that certainly fits a midfield profile that we need. And he's able to play multiple positions in that midfield. And Guendouzi would probably suit that a bit better.
Yeah. Well, again, remains to be seen this week whether we do get him in. I do think we've got the trump card with him working with Emery, really liking Emery. So we'll wait and see.
I also would say that we've seen Sanson leave again today. So I think there's going to be room there will be, and Nakamba's probably on his way out, I think, from what I know. So I think there's going to be space in there for someone, definitely.
Nice. Exciting times. Last couple of players that you wanted to focus on, a midfielder that again was doing the rounds a little bit at the start of this window. I think maybe agents looking to get him touted to Premier League clubs is Mikel Merino. Again, if we're to potentially take him from Real Sociedad's hands, what could we maybe expect from him?
Yeah, proper, really good defensive midfielder, able to play doesn't really necessarily play higher up, but he will goal contribute. Great with the ball at his feet, defensively solid. This is a player who has come on massively since what they saw at Newcastle United. A totally different prospect, 26 years old, managed to come on quite a bit experience-wise, and everything else has really come on So, 8 ball recoveries, fantastic player. 8 ball recoveries per 90 minutes. That's the sort of defensive midfielder you want. Whether we need him now is another thing. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be fantastic. I think he would let other players really do their work. But as we can see here, he's got a lot of creative in him.
Yeah.
That sometimes goes unnoticed a lot by what people see on the television or what they've seen. Unless you're looking at data and you're looking at stats, a lot of that times would be missed. Yes, he is defensively minded, but he can create as well. So again, you've got a player there who could fit a couple of different profiles, able to play in different positions and able to compete. They do need competition in that midfield, in that squad, I think, because the reliance on Luiz and Kamara, it's not healthy.
No, and we know what happens with someone like Dougie Luiz. Bless him, he's playing really well at the moment, but he can be tempted to get that little bit too casual at times. And if he knows he's got his place guaranteed, is he going to get the same? Are we going to get the same out of him every week consistently? If he's got someone like a Marino or a Guendouzi or whoever breathing down his neck, it's obviously going to elevate that performance level, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I say, you always need competition within a squad, and I think if they can get sort of the level that we're talking about, maybe a Guendouzi, maybe a Marina, you're looking at some healthy, but you're looking at decent squad depth, which is massively important.
Yeah, 100%. And finally, mate, obviously we've seen potential. We've seen Bednarek going back to Southampton today, and potentially Callum Chambers is being made available to look for a club. Diego Carlos is on the way back, but we don't know kind of what that necessarily means in terms of his fitness. So you've mentioned that we might be in the market for a centre half, and you've highlighted Maxime Lacroix here. Is that what his name is? Sorry, what's his first name?
Maxence Lacroix. Yeah, we
highlighted
him. Yeah, we highlighted him last season. I mean, he is another favourite, another Twitter favourite, as you like. But obviously, we've been looking at him for quite a while. He's been on sort of improving on his numbers, sort of year by year. And I think if everyone's ever watched Lacroix play, his calmness on the ball is unbelievable. Similar to a Tyrone Mings sort of on the ball type, very calm, very relaxed, but not too casual where you think there's going to be a mistake.
Yeah.
He can play the ball well. He can drive into midfield. He's strong in the air. He looks for a pass forward. He doesn't sort of tend to play back a lot. He looks for that forward pass. Another one that doesn't get dribbled past very often, set piece aerial threat. And he is another, and again, so young, 22 years of age, but it seems like he's been around forever. Really popular centre back. And whether I don't think we'll be in for one for January. I don't think it's necessary because they will look to Carlos and Dendoncker will obviously fill in at centre back if we do have other injuries there. Yeah. So, but we will have. I think in the summer there will be another top centre back coming in as a priority.
Excellent. Well, that is. I mean, this data is just ideal, and it's so great to have this level of analysis, mate. So thank you so much for that. If you had to put your neck out though and say, who would be most likely to come in, or which players would be most likely to come in this window, who would you kind of put your hat on?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to say Guendouzi, haven't you? Really, just judging by all the sort of talk and everything, especially back in France and things like that. So, yeah, I'd like to see others coming in. I think we'll probably only see Guendouzi. Whether there'll be a possible centre forward coming as a loan, I don't know. But I think we're going to see a lot more business in the summer, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, remains to be seen. I agree with you. I think Guendouzi is pretty much, there and done and dusted. Maybe one or two loans, particularly with the ones that we've let back on loan. And if we're forced to do Dembele, maybe we go for it because there might be other clubs that are going to try and steal a march on us. But Gareth, thank you so much for this. It's invaluable. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Where can we find you on Twitter, mate? I'd ask you this every week, but your followers are going up and up and up. So where can everyone find you? There you are. YJC.
Yeah, I hope it's been informative for people, and obviously I'm always open to some questions or anything on Twitter if anyone wants to ask anything. So yeah, well up for that.
Absolutely fantastic. And please guys, leave a like on this video, comment who do you want to see coming in. Do you want to see Gareth do any profiles on any other players? Because this is fantastic information. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Who do you want to see come in? Who do you want us to do a profile on? We'll do a talking tactics as well coming up this week, so please look out for that because we got another win, Gareth. We when we do these talking tactics, we keep winning. So fantastic. Well, please guys, thank you so much, and remember
I'll leave it to that. Thanks, everyone.